Welcome to DF King's Proxy Insights podcast series. Zally Ahmadi, SVP Corporate Governance, ESG, and Executive Compensation, is your host for today's episode. She is joined today by Tom Germinario, Senior Managing Director, DF King.
Hey, this is Zally Ahmadi, and I'm here with Tom Germinario, a colleague of mine. He's the co-head of the Proxy department here and a member of the Special Situations team who deal with activist situations. So that's the topic of today's podcast. So Tom, if we can just dive right in, I'm just going to ask you, how does an activist typically contact a company as a first entry point?
First of all, Zally, it's great to do this podcast with you today for our clients and friends. So thank you very much. As a first entry point, companies have to be aware. Usually a call comes into IR. IR is seen by the investor community as the conduit to management to call and ask initial questions. So it's very important for the investor relations staff to monitor who's calling in, who are the firms, are there any firms they don't recognize, and call DF King and get an activist profile so you understand who's calling and what the history is. We've seen these situations ratchet up quickly because a call could come in and it appears normal at first. Mm-hmm. They're asking normal questions about the business, the growth, the revenue projections, and then there could be a second call that gets a little more intense, and finally there could be situations where a director nominations come in right before the director nomination deadline. So it's very important, and that IR department is the first entry to the company.
How do current trends in shareholder engagement relate to proper activism, defense preparedness?
Yeah, it's a very important question. Just to go over some history, years ago, engagement was really done in solicitation period. Mm-hmm. It was mostly about executive compensation, maybe some shareholder proposals. But now the way engagement has evolved, and really this is because of Say on Pay and the Say on Pay movement, it created a requirement that there be engagement throughout the year. And that led to the off-season engagement trend. So it's very important for companies to have a strategic plan that's 12 months in nature, that uses the off-season, that also prepares the company. One of the things that needs to be done in shareholder engagement is to understand the themes that are coming from investors. Mm-hmm. And are any of the themes very important, leading to activism, like disappointment in management and the board, poor performing business, high compensation. All of these are the things that will lead to an activist situation.
There is no off-season anymore, is there?
There's no off-season anymore, for sure.
So talk to me a little bit about some of the best practices that companies can use to prepare for activism before it knocks on their door.
Yeah, very important. I mean, in our business is all about analysis and planning. Mm-hmm. So it's very important for companies to be proactive. We'll start by understanding the shareholder base. Changes in the shareholder base, using ownership intelligence or stock surveillance services to understand if there's any accumulation. We do shareholder profile analysis and to understand the base and the constituency breakdown, how important is institutional versus retail and the like. But probably most important is to have a defense team in place, a defense team that includes an experienced investment bank, law firm, PR firm, and of course to hire DF King. In that way, you're really vetting the themes, and a company has to really do a straw man and play their own activists. So looking at their own vulnerabilities, who will an activist come after on the board? For whatever reason, underperformance, for tenure, what are the things that are important to the business? What is the business underperforming? What are the metrics that are underperforming? But having the right team in place will help companies vet the right responses, the crisp responses to all those tough questions.
Crisp response. I
Yeah,
like that.
absolutely.
So a lot of what your team does is shareholder profile analysis, right? So how does that change when you're facing an activist situation or a potential proxy contest? What changes in that methodology?
Yes. So shareholder profile analysis is the key to understand the constituencies, to understand the top institutional investors, who follows ISS and Glass Lewis, all of that. In a proxy contest or activist situation, the analysis is magnified many times due to trying to do more situational analysis. So what type of proxy contest is this? Is it capital allocation themes? Is it sell the company? We try to zero in on those situations and then look at the client's top institutions and how they have voted in those situations. Then divide further into how they have voted when ISS went one way or ISS went another way to understand that influence. But most of all, for annual meetings, we do vote projections on shareholder proposals and different types of proposals. But in proxy contests, our vote projections become what's the probability of management getting their directors reelected or the dissident getting their nominees elected. So it's that type of stepped up analysis.
So say there's an activist knocking on the door of one of your clients, right? How does the identity of the activist affect defense strategy?
Yeah, very important point. There are a lot of activists out there. There are some new activists on the scene that are increasing their assets under management, trying to increase their public profile. But there are, major activists out there, such as Trian, Elliott, Starboard, Corvex, Mantle Ridge. This is serious business when these guys come calling. And look, they're the pedigree of activists. And so the main point for a company is to understand who's knocking at the door. Make sure you have a good profile on that investor, even before you call them back. You have to know who you're meeting with. You have to know what their history is. You're going to be speaking to them. You have to meet with them. But it has to be strategically planned, and you have to understand the history of that activist. Have they filed 13Ds? Have they issued public letters against the board? Have they contested a merger? So it's very important to truly understand the activists, and that'll help when you speak to them. They get the feeling that you know who they are.
Knowledge is key, right?
Key.
So the landscape has changed so much across everything proxy related, right? Shareholder proposals, advisory services, but activism as well. How would you say the topics and levers for activism have changed over the past 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, great question. The, proxy contests years ago were, about board representation and increasing representation on the board. But now the level of sophistication has really changed. So when there's a proxy contest, chances are there might be a 50-page deck filed against the company that really rips apart the company's business, their board, their underperformance, if there is. And it really takes a measure of looking at the business and understanding why a company is underperforming their peer group. Just very sophisticated analysis about the business. It also can be extremely direct about looking at the board, looking at the poor governance of a company, if that's the case. But really looking at the board members, which ones are being targeted, how they've underperformed on other boards, amazing statistics in a very lengthy presentation against the company. So the conclusion for the company is that you have to be prepared, you have to anticipate these attacks, and how are you going to be ready? How are you going to be ready to answer the hard questions about the board and the performance of the company, and which directors are going to be targeted. You got to think about that in advance.
Makes sense. Thanks so much, Tom.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Proxy Insights. If you enjoyed this show, please follow us on your platform of choice. If you would like to learn more about DF King, please visit our website,